But good morning, and thanks for being here. My name is Dale Butland. I am the Communications Director for Innovation Ohio. Joining me in person this morning is IO's President Janetta, who you just heard from. Joining us by special telephone hookup are Steve Rattner, the lead advisor to President Obama during the 2009 rescue of the auto industry, and Tom Perriello, CEO of the Center for American Progress Action Fund in Washington, D.C. We're here this morning to blow the whistle on Mitt Romney's increasingly dishonest and cynical attempt to mislead Ohio voters about President Obama's rescue of the American automobile industry. We'll be using a few visuals in our presentation this morning. As Janetta said, those of you on the phone can get them at our website. Those of you who are here in person, you've got handouts there in front of you, as well as on a screen over here to my left. Governor Romney's latest round of dishonesty began on October 25th, when he told a campaign rally in Defiance, Ohio, that, and I quote, "Jeep is thinking of moving all production to China." That same day, literally within hours, Chrysler Corporation emphatically denied Mr. Romney's claim, likening it to, and I quote, "a leap that would be difficult even for circus acrobats," and characterizing his remarks as, again I quote, "unnecessary fantasies and extravagant comments." Now you would think that a withering rebuke like that would cause the Romney campaign to tuck tail and back off, but you would be wrong. Just 2 days later, on October 27th, Mr. Romney began airing a TV ad in which he tweaked the words but essentially repeated the earlier lie. Obama, the ad says, sold Chrysler to the Italians who are going to build Jeeps in China. And just for good measure, the ad added 3 additional distortions that I won't take the time to go into here, but which you can read in the news release that you got when you came in. The bottom line is that every fact-checking organization that has reviewed the Romney ad has labeled it false. The Tampa Tribune's PolitiFact column, for example, found it to be so blatantly untrue that they gave it a pants on fire rating. But obviously, the Romney campaign does not embarrass easily. A few weeks ago, they told us they would not allow the fact-checkers to dictate their campaign. And now they've proven it anew by not just doubling down on their untruth, but by tripling down on it. Yesterday, the Romney campaign began running a radio ad in several Ohio markets, which not only repeats their claim about Chrysler shipping jobs to China, a claim, remember, that was vehemently debunked by Chrysler itself, but which also claims that General Motors is planning on doing the exact same thing. GM responded immediately. "We've clearly entered some parallel universe during these last few days," they said, before going on to decry what they called, and I'm quoting, "campaign politics at its cynical worst." Apparently, Governor Romney does not believe he will pay a price for his campaign's blatant dishonesty. So he must believe either that Ohioans are stupid enough to fall for these lies, or that Ohioans have become so jaded and passive that we won't hold him accountable for telling them. I don't think the Romney campaign knows Ohio or Ohioans. For us, the truth still matters. And if Governor Romney will lie to us about auto jobs, I believe Ohioans are going to start asking themselves what else he might be lying about. In a moment, Steve Rattner will tell us about another Romney deceit, namely his claim that he actually favored using US dollars, taxpayer money, to save the auto industry. But before he does, Janetta will tell us how a key Romney ally, Governor John Kasich, has abetted Governor Romney by minimizing the importance of the auto rescue to Ohio and grotesquely underestimating the number of jobs the rescue has created.
And as Dale laid out, Governor Romney certainly has embarked on this campaign of deceit on Ohioans, but his surrogates have also been a part of that, and most specifically, Governor John Kasich has been a part of this. And we're using these words, deceit, things like deceit, not lightly, because these are very strong allegations, but we're using them because that's what this is. And how do we know that? We know that because, as Chrysler CEO Sergio Marchionne said yesterday, the numbers tell the story. And that's the part I want to share with you today. What are the numbers in Ohio? What are the facts? And so first, if we can, you can look at the screen here that you have in front of you, and those of you who are online, you can look at the chart that shows that according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics quarterly census of employment and wages, Ohio has seen 17,300 jobs added since the auto rescue. And those are direct jobs here in Ohio. That's not even counting the jobs saved, and it's also not factoring in the multiplier effect. These are 17,300 direct jobs in Ohio after the rescue. And that's not surprising, though, because Ohio would benefit from the auto rescue, because we know that nearly 850,000 jobs in Ohio are related to the industry, and that's 1 in every 8 jobs in Ohio. Again, that's something that should be celebrated and not lied about for political gain. But unfortunately, that's not what's happening. And so you can see on the next slide, if you're following along online, you can see Governor Kasich's most recent remarks on Meet the Press just this past Sunday, in which he said the Bureau of Labor Statistics says that we are up a total of 400 auto jobs when you count the companies and the suppliers. Again, that's not true. And here is why voters are not going to believe either Mitt Romney or John Kasich. And that's because over the last 3 years, if you've lived in Ohio, you have opened up your newspaper, you have turned on your TV, and you have seen a drumbeat of headlines like this. Columbus Dispatch says General Motors restarted additional shift at Lordstown plant for Chevy Cruze, producing 1,200 jobs. Toledo Blade, General Motors announces 400 jobs. AP, $72 million investment in the Perrysburg plant by Chrysler, the Plain Dealer. And this is just a snapshot on this slide of the drumbeat of headlines that Ohioans have seen over the last 3 years. And if the BLS data isn't enough for you, and if the headlines isn't enough for you, let's go to a third source. And that third source is John Kasich's own Department of Development numbers. So you can go to the next slide, you can see the pie charts. And what does the Department of Development numbers tell us? That 34% of all private investment in 2011 was in the auto industry in Ohio. That 11 of those 29 big investments in 2011, the ones over $50 million, 11 of 29 were auto investments. And of these auto deals, they accounted for 18% of all private sector job announcements in 2011. Again, this is the Department of Development, John Kasich's own agency. So we've showed you BLS data, we've showed you the headlines from the stories of these investments, and then if that wasn't enough, we showed you John Kasich's numbers. And millions of dollars of ads, that's not going to buy the truth. We pulled these numbers together to show you, but I quite frankly am not worried about Ohioans being swayed by these ads, because Ohioans know the truth. And sometimes, people forget about Ohio in between elections, and that's okay. And maybe it was lost on Governor Romney that over the last 4 years, we in Ohio have been rebuilding the auto industry. We've been getting our jobs back. We've been celebrating these big investments. It's our comeback story, and Ohioans have been living the success of the auto rescue every day, and the numbers back that up. So Mitt Romney and John Kasich, quite frankly, are insulting Ohio voters with this political spin, and it's very disrespectful. We know that President Obama took an enormous risk when he bet on Ohio and Ohio voters, and the president's bet paid off. And now over 17,000 Ohioans are back to work in the auto industry, and Ohio's unemployment rate is lower than it's been since 2008. But we also know if Romney, Kasich, and Josh Mandel had their way, Ohioans wouldn't have an auto industry today. So with that, I'd like to move to introduce Steven Rattner. Steve, are you on the phone with us?
I am indeed. I just want to focus on, as Dale said, on the broader issue of Mitt Romney's position on autos historically and how that relates to what actually happened and some of the things he's been saying now. As you know, Mitt Romney has been trying to rewrite the history of his position on autos, and that's led to some confusion as to what his position actually is. So let me try to emphasize the key points. Starting with the famous New York Times op-ed back in November of 2008, Romney has been very clear in opposing any government help for the auto companies, except possibly after, and I underscore after, bankruptcy. The problem with that approach is that there would have been no after. Companies can't operate without cash. Even George Bush recognized that when he provided $17 billion in bridge loans to General Motors and Chrysler in late 2008. In both 2008 and certainly into the spring of 2009, when I was serving in the Obama administration, there was no private capital available to allow these companies to keep making cars. So without President Obama's help, Chrysler and General Motors would have stopped making cars, they would have closed their doors, they would have laid off thousands of workers, they would have stopped paying suppliers, and they would have simply shut down. The result would have been disaster. Our nation's auto suppliers, heavily concentrated in Ohio, would have also had to shut their doors. Ford would have closed, at least temporarily, because you can't build cars without parts. And all told, according to studies that have been done by independent analysts, something on the order of 1.4 million jobs would have been lost. Now, Mitt Romney, in addition to everything else, still claims that the auto industry would have been better off if President Obama had never intervened. That strikes me as completely absurd. Mitt Romney has tried to rewrite history with auto rescue so many times that he's convinced himself that he's been for-saving the industry all along, and that is simply not true. There is only one man in this race who stood by Ohio's auto workers, and that man is President Obama.